Okay, great. So let's go ahead and jump into the WrapTrack PowerPoint here. Okay, a couple of things to be mindful of when you get into WrapTrack for the first time. And because you guys weren't a previous user of Wonders, I will be creating your what we call configuration in the system. And I'll be giving you access to sort of like an administrative role. And I think that, Elizabeth, you'll probably be in that, obviously. And then your care coordinators or folks who are going to be entering the data will be sort of like more like a team member role or something like that. So we'll talk about roles and permissions and who needs to be in there. And each person will have their own individual login and password to manage. And we'll talk some more about those details in a second. But a couple of things when you get in there is you want to try to make sure that your operating system, or maybe even more importantly your internet browser, is the most up-to-date as possible. Excuse me. And what we do is we really recommend that folks use Google Chrome. We've noticed that there are just fewer sort of technical things, glitches that may come up. For example, if you use Internet Explorer, and we don't know why this happens, but the programmers aren't able to really change it either. But if you use Internet Explorer, even the most recent version, you'll get an additional question that will ask you, are you really sure you want to execute that function, for example? So it's just an extra step, and people have noted that when using the Internet Explorer and WrapTrack. So that's one of the reasons why we recommend Google Chrome, and we just provide a little link here. Another important thing to point out is that you really want to make sure that your pop-up blocker has been disabled, because we have a lot of other screens that open up in a sort of a pop-up window, so to speak, especially around data entry. So if that's not been checked on, you may say, I click on this little button and I want to open up one of the WIFI forms, but it might not let you do that because you might not have that pop-up blocker changed. So definitely make sure to pay attention to that. And then finally on this page, you'd want to make sure to add these email addresses to your safe sender list. And WrapEval, obviously, you should recognize that that's connected to us at UW. But specifically, I think it's this second one here in the middle, more specifically this one, this no reply at wraptms.org email address is going to be important to add, because if for whatever reason you forget your password or you're in the system and need to have it sent to you, all things that are connected to the system that might send you a message are going to come from that no reply email address. So that's why it's important to add. Okay. So here's our introduction. So one of the reasons why I asked about WrapTMS, and if you'd heard about it, and so you have, that's great. I'll just give you a couple more other informational slides about it. The reason we bring it up, though, is because you may recall when we were just taking a quick peek online about where WrapTrack is located, you'll see that it has WrapTMS sort of listed across the top of the screen, and it's because they're built on the same TMS platform. And you can see sort of information about that. But that's one of the reasons why you're going to see this come up a little bit more. And then here's just some other information that you've probably heard about WrapTMS. It's more comprehensive than just collecting fidelity data on a youth. Obviously, there's outcomes and family satisfaction and fidelity is all kind of connected to it, and can be I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for right now, but you can cross those lines, so to speak. But WrapTMS also does this other component of capturing the entire wraparound team process. So family stories, services and costs, plan of care, some of that other information. So, and here's another slide about sort of the way that works. But again, you'll note that that's why you'll access WrapTMS and WrapTrack in the same place. It's a single point of entry. So if your system or community started using WrapTMS, if that was something that you'd be interested in doing as well, your youth that are in WrapTrack would be obviously be able to communicate with the WrapTMS system. So it's kind of neat to be able to have that option if communities are interested in it. Anyway, continue on. So if you are interested in it or want to learn a little bit more or want to even try it out, we are able to provide a free 30-day trial, 30-day pass essentially to get you into the demo site for TMS, and you can kind of play around in there, enter data. Obviously, if you have a trial login, that's not going to connect to your WrapTrack data, but if it's something that you're interested in purchasing because it is a separate sort of component, I can also send you a price menu and some other information. So just let me know if that's something you'd like to see at the end of the training today. Okay, so WrapTrack will certainly contains our Wi-Fi 4 fidelity index tool and our team observation measure, TOM, but we also have a new form, which is essentially a short form of the Wi-Fi, and we call it the Wi-Fi EZ. And the difference being it's fewer items, and also it's a self-report version of the Wi-Fi 4, essentially. So instead of having someone sit down with a caregiver, for example, and interview them, this is a form where you can just, walk through it with them if that's a necessary step, or give them a link to access a computer, and they can actually just take it right online, or they can complete themselves via paper, and then someone can retrieve that information and enter that data. So there's a couple of different options. And again, if you're interested in hearing more about the Wi-Fi 4, just let me know, and I can share some more information about that. Okay. So, and we just walked through this a little bit ago, but again, this is what happens when you go to WrapInfo, and you'll be on the WrapTrack page. You click on that link. Here's obviously, again, the work stuff. I apologize if this is in here because I just walked you through it that way. But this is where you're going to access any training materials, additional collaborator information, and then obviously we have a link to the NWI site, the National Wraparound Initiative, and that's just a great resource for all kinds of things related to WRAP. So. All right, so this page, again, looks familiar as well, and this is where you're going to use your login and password. But here's where that forgot password link kind of comes into play, and needing to make sure that the no reply email address is added to your safe sender list. So if you click on this forgot password link, which you'd want to do, so if you've logged in using your information, and let's say you've accidentally mistyped something in your password, I think there's only, and there's a slide down the road here a little bit that's going to tell you more about it, but I think that there are only 5 attempts you can make within 10 minutes before you kind of become locked out of the system, so to speak. So if that happens, what you need to do is you have to click on this forgot password link, and essentially have the system reset your password, and they need to send that to you in that email from the no reply. So that's how the process works. Okay. This slide is obviously not going to be applicable to you guys because we do not have you previously set up in Wonder, so don't worry about that. Okay, so one of the things that you want to do when you guys kind of first get in there, and this is going to be for every person coming in for the first time, is you'll see a home page essentially that looks like this, and it'll say WrapTrack at the top, and it'll have your name and the community, and then some other information. You want to make sure to click on the user settings and update a couple of different things when you get in here. One of the things being you want to make sure that this information, like your email address, is correct, and some other information. If you want to include address, you're more than welcome to. It's obviously not a required field. These little asterisk signs have the required or mandatory fields that you need to enter. But you can certainly include as much information here as possible. It certainly doesn't hurt. This is also where you're going to update your period of inactivity for your computer. So that might be you can see, like right here, it's listed as 60 minutes, but you can have it as low as 15 minutes and intervals in between there. But that's going to be just important, something to update, because I think it starts out at 0 once you first log in, so you actually have to change it. And then finally, you'll want to change your security question, and again, this is important for the password. So go in here and make sure to update that, because I believe the very first thing that the forgot password link asks you is your security question so that you can actually move forward and send that. So at any rate, those are important things to make sure you do. And then obviously here's how that would look. Once you click on that little button, it pulls up, you type in your password, you type in your question and the answer, and that's the process. So, all right, couple of things to note about passwords. So again, this is not going to be as important for you guys necessarily because a lot of folks had, old Wonders usernames and passwords that they had be able to transfer over. However, some of them were not HIPAA-FERPA compliant, so folks had to change them right away, and there are a lot of specific rules around that. And so when you guys get set up initially, you're going to just go ahead and start fresh. You're not going to have to worry about, oh gosh, is this one going to work? Is that one going to work? And the system will remind you as well, but it's certainly a great idea to reference this. You definitely want to make sure your password's between 8 to 16 characters, has to have a letter, number, special character. Your username also has to be at least 6 characters long. And so again, obviously anything referencing Wonders you can ignore, but this is going to be important, and I believe, Elizabeth, this will be most important for you in the beginning because you'll probably be the person that's going to set up the other users. I will get you set up as sort of the administrator role unless there's somebody else that seems appropriate for that fit, but I think it sounds like that's going to be your role in the process, and I'll get you set up, and then we'll walk through how to get your other user set up, and you'll be doing that piece. So you'll want to make sure because one of the pieces, and you may need to just talk to them individually or what have you, or you can create it yourself, but if you want to ask them what they prefer their username and password to be, that would be okay, but you'll work that out. But at any rate, a couple other things to point out on this slide would be that the system actually requires the user to update the password every 60 days, so that's important to note. You're going to be kind of redoing that pretty frequently, so it's going to be important to jot that information down, keep a record of it somewhere, and that's going to be helpful because also the system keeps I think 10 previous passwords used, so you can't reuse those 10 previous passwords. So it's important to kind of remember what you've done in the past. You can also a user can change their password at any time if needed, and that was actually on a previous slide, and you can just click on the little change password link. Again, that talks about the period of inactivity down there. Also, if you've had 5 consecutive invalid login attempts within 10 minutes, you'll become a disabled user. And then there's a little note that pops up and lets you know what you need to do. And it's typically just contacting me or contacting April, and we can get you set back up in the system. And what else about this slide? I think that's it. Okay, so I don't know that is going to be very confusing again for you guys because you're just brand new into the system, so it shouldn't be too tricky to work through. But at any rate, okay, couple of things to note. Again, you can kind of ignore the left-hand side of this, but one thing is in Wonders we had a very rigid and strict sort of configuration set up for that group of users in there. And so, for example, you can see there's levels 1 through 5, and it identifies who the person is or what their role is, and we didn't have any flexibility in there at all. So it really was, if you were a person entering data only, you'd have to be a level 4, and that kind of thing. So this system is a little bit more flexible and customizable to a group's needs. So, for example, in WrapTrack, we'd obviously the WORT team here at University of Washington would still be sort of that top-level access, so we could make sure that we're accessing your data and providing support when needed. And, I believe you're going to be probably identified as our configuration administrator, who's going to be able to assign users and update your, your subsites if needed, to look at all the use, to be able to report, export, that kind of thing. And then you can have, again, some of those other folks that are maybe just doing the data entry piece in some of these other roles, like a team member or a supervisory administrator, even if there's a level jurisdiction, something like that between these folks. The important thing to note, though, is that it's sort of all three of these levels. If you wanted them to, and this is probably not advisable, but if you wanted them to, a jurisdictional program administrator, a supervisory administrator, and a team member could all have these same exact permissions. Again, not recommended that you do that, but if you wanted to do that, you could in WrapTrack, and that's one of the things we want to point out, that it's very customizable. Okay. So here's just a few examples of sort of different ways that folks have done that. But I have a feeling you guys are pretty knowledgeable in sort of the tier or the levels of users that you'll have, but here's just a couple examples otherwise. Okay, so let's get into some of the screenshots, and I'm going to move through these fairly quickly because I do want to get into the demo piece and actually show you the live system and data entering. But this is sort of your home screen, and everybody will have a home screen that sort of has this type of information. Your youth records will be there, and access to quick links, adding a new youth record or finding a youth record. So some of that information is going to be all on your dashboard. But I want to draw your attention to the menu button up in the upper left corner. This is sort of how you navigate the site. So when you click on it, this is what comes up, a little page with a home tab, an enrollment tab, a reports and data export tab, and then an admin tab for those folks who are appropriate to have administrative sort of permissions. So not everyone's going to have that, obviously. We also have a time and date stamp, so that's kind of a neat feature in WrapTrack that Wonders did not have. So this is how you're going to navigate the system. So instead of using your quick links or your youth records on the main page of your home screen there or your dashboard, you can just go to this enrollment tab and access the same information, and likewise with your reports and exports, that's where that will be. So a couple of things when you're in a youth record, and this is sort of what it looks like when you're in a youth record. You have this information about demographics. There's a WrapTrack tab, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You can see that we're on the youth page of this information. There's also an assessments tab, and that's where you're going to find your WIFI and your TOM forms. But when you go in and you start working with a youth record, what you need to do is actually make some changes with the enrollment status for that youth. So you click on the enrollment button, it pops up in a pop-up window, and again, this is why the pop-up blocker being disabled is important, because this will pop up in a separate window. And basically, you'll note that every youth that is entered is going to start out as pending. And what you'll need to do is make sure that you change them to enrolled. And this can be, sort of a date range that makes sense for your community and what you track. But typically, most folks use enrollment as the actual date of enrollment into services. So that might be something that you want to continue to do. And one important note is, and you can see it right here, so if you know that this youth that you're working with and entering into the system was enrolled, let's just pretend that they were enrolled back in December of 2012, let's say December 10th, you'd want to make sure that the pending date is also edited, because it has to be at least 1 day prior to your enrollment date. So you'd click on the Edit tab or link here, and you'd make sure to edit that, make it December 9th, and then go ahead and add enrollment status and make the youth enrolled and make them December 10th. And that's at the point where you connect them to the specific organization or subsite or what have you as well. So that's a neat way to do it. And then additionally, you could see, as we were talking about it, you'd also click on the Assessments tab next to the Youth tab, and that's where you're going to find your forms. You're going to click on Add and locate to pull up your WIFI for your TOM or what have you. Basically, you guys, since you weren't in Wonders, you're not going to know sort of the way they was set up there, but not too much has changed. We've just upgraded some of the visual components. But what is nice to know is that when you're in there, you'll note that it just sort of mimics the forms. So it won't be very complicated for folks in terms of data entry. It just follows a similar pattern of the hard copy form. So this is what it looks like, and for example, I've selected the engagement tab, which is the first phase, and you can see that there's just questions 1.1 through 1.6, and these drop-down menus. And what's neat is you can actually, tab through these and just press 0, 1, 2 to make it quick, or you can actually use the drop-down, click on it, and then select that way. But one thing that this little note is pointing out here is about the save button, and you can see it actually says do not save after each section or tab up here. The reason being, we've got a little fail-safe in the system that where we want you to actually complete the entire form in every field in the form prior to hitting save. So you'd want to actually start at caregiver, go through, finish at other, enter the last piece of data there, which would be, I think it's actually the end time of the interview, and then hit save. So it actually wants you to fill out everything before you do that. Now let's just say, for example, though, that you've got someone who's completing data entry and they've all of a sudden been pulled aside to another important task and need to come back to this at another time. It's easy enough to add some of those critical pieces that need to be added, mandatory fields, and we'll get into that and I'll show you what those look like, and then hit save as well without actually entering any of the phase data. So I'll talk a little bit about that. There is that workaround if needed, but what we really do advise is that when people sit down and do data entry that they're going through from beginning to end with minimal distraction or interruption. Okay, so the reports feature is, again, mimics sort of what we had in Wonders, but with an upgraded kind of look and feel to it. We've also condensed some of our reports, but it's all the sort of same information that's always been kind of gathered and collected. And you would see that what you do is just click on one of these links that you'd like to look at, and then you'll actually enter some qualifying data that allows you to kind of specify what you'd like to report out. So that's one thing to note. Exports are listed here, and they're sort of similar in the sense that you click on the Export tab, and you decide what you're interested in exporting. Maybe, Tom or the facilitator WIFI form, for example, or what have you. You click on that link, and follows this sort of similar pattern, pulls up your qualifiers, and these are the same qualifiers for the reporting as well. And you just kind of go through and make your selections, and once you've done all of that, you can export the data into Excel and look at it that way. And so a lot of people like to do that for additional data analyses, obviously. So, and then obviously that can be pushed into SPSS if you do, use that type of statistical analysis program as well. All right, so Tom data entry, kind of similar process to the WIFI as well. Again, you're just going to go to your assessments, click on Add. One thing you'll note when you review the actual form when it shows up in the pop-up window is that it's divided into a couple of different parts, and you'll note that there are 2 items with their indicators per part. So they're all there. You just got to click through them, and you can add additional notes, etc. And the same advice we give for the WIFI, we give for the TOM, to just go through and enter all the information in one go and then hit save at the end. So reports function the same way as well. You just click on the link, you enter your qualifiers, and a report is generated that you can then, PDF, put into Word, put into Excel, what have you, save and send to, somebody via email or print out for a meeting, that kind of thing. So, okay, so actually here's where I'm going to close out of the PowerPoint for 1 second, mostly because at that point we were talking with folks about how they can test the data that's been transferred to Wonders, from Wonders to WrapTrack, and that's obviously not something that we're doing here for you guys, so we won't worry about those last few pieces. So let's go ahead, and I want to actually just log in with our test configuration and show you. But let me just pause for a second and see, Elizabeth, if you have any questions or if you'd like to focus on one specific thing as we get into this actual demonstration piece.
I don't think I have any questions right now. You said we'll go over the how to log into it and all of that in a minute, because I don't have a password or username or anything yet.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'll do is I need to actually set up your guys' site and configuration. So what I'll do is we have an administrative, sort of design administrative role, and we have a separate login that April and I use to add a new community, essentially, is what we'll be doing, since you guys weren't in Wonders previously. So we'll go in, we'll create your site. I also know your subsites, because we communicated back and forth a little while ago about that. So I have all of that information, and I'll create you as a user only, and send you an email with your username and password. And I'll probably just go ahead and send you a few screenshots, of how you would set up some of the users. But I can also do that in one of our other configurations that's the data is de-identified. So I can go in and show you sort of what that administrative function looks like and how you would create additional users once we have you set up. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So we'll just go through this piece really kind of quickly then, and we'll maybe focus more on that. Okay. So again, the process is pretty simple, and what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and add a new youth record and sort of show you from there what you would do. So let's just say, obviously the first time you guys are getting in here, when you log in, when you all log in, you're not going to have any records showing. So what you would do is click on this Add a New Youth Record link. Now let's just say that you did have records showing, and you're interested in looking for a particular youth, and let's say you have a lot of records, 500 records or something, a number where it would be hard to kind of just navigate through using the number tabs here. So you actually just want to find that particular youth that you're looking for, or see if they've already been entered by someone else. That might be possible, and you don't want to have a duplicate entry, for example. You click on the Find a Youth Record, and you'd be able to search via name or via WRAP ID, and we'll talk about what that is in a second. And you can even search with, it starts with this or it contains this. So that's kind of a neat feature, and I'm just going to actually, I'll say, let's see if it'll search me. I think I have a test person in here. So yeah, so it searched my name and found that I, was here, as a test user. So that's kind of a neat feature. And then, if you want to just, cancel out of that, we'll do that. But so let's go ahead and just start with Add a New Youth Record. And a couple things to point out on this slide. You can see that there, not slide, we're not in the PowerPoint anymore, apologies. On the screen would be that there are a few mandatory fields that need to be completed, whereas other information is not necessary to enter into. You certainly do not have to enter first and last name if you would prefer to not do that. But if you don't feel comfortable adding that information, you'll see here below that the WRAP ID will be used as the first and last name if that information is not provided. And that's right here. And so let's talk about WRAP ID for a second, actually. And you may want to pop off mute for a minute, because I'm not sure how you guys do this. But you're yeah, let's talk about your ID system or your ID structure. Do you guys already have that sort of set up? Is that something that, a youth record is given this certain ID, and, that you wouldn't mind putting that in this system?
Our youth all of our youth in our programs have a RIN number, which is tied to their billing. And I don't know that we'd want to use that, but all of the youth that are in WRAP have one that is tied to their to the LAN, the local area network.
Okay. So that might be something then that you're willing to use. Either way, I would just obviously suggest that whichever ID you're using is consistent throughout the process. And I know like a few times folks will want to add on, either some sort of number at the end or the beginning, or letters or something that helps determine, if this youth works with a particular facilitator as well, if that's something that you're interested in. So folks sometimes set up IDs in that way as well. So whatever you guys are comfortable with using or doing, I would suggest doing that. But obviously, Wrap ID is going to be extremely important, and it's highlighted in blue here because it is, even though it doesn't have a little mandatory dot next to it, it is a mandatory field. So I'll show you what would happen. Let's just pretend Joe. And I'll just sort of show you what happens. And let's say you weren't, again, interested in entering date of birth. You could just do this. It just has to have something in it, in the field. Okay, and I'm just going to hit save, and it should tell me, yeah. A little error message will come up saying, oh, well, this is required, so you can't enter it until this is done. So I would just go ahead and type whatever, and you can even put dashes or periods. I believe, yep, dot. Whatever it is. So we'll just save that. All right, and so when I hit save, another message window comes up, and it just says, great. Do you want to continue to enter data, or no? Do you want to keep entering new youth records? So I'll just click yes. We want to just keep looking at the data. So here's where I was referencing, this is actually a youth file. So that was the very first step that we did. So if you want to kind of think about it for your folks entering data, we just did step 1, which is adding a new youth record. Step 2 is actually updating the enrollment. So I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly, but you'll hit the green enrollment button, and again, let's pretend that this youth was enrolled back in January. So I need to actually first go in and edit the pending date. So I'm going to click on that, and I will, I want to keep it in 2013, and I'll just say, that we are going to enroll in the day after this. So January 10th, and I hit update. And now I'm going to click Add Enrollment Status. And now I'm going to say that he was actually enrolled on the 11th. And I select Enrolled from the Enrollment Status drop-down. And then this is where I'm going to connect him to like a subsite. For example, I'm just going to say this guy for our example here. And there you go. So you can see that he's actually now been listed as enrolled. He's connected to his organization or subsite, and this is how long he's been enrolled for. So that's the step 2 piece of the process. And you can see that when you enter that information, it then pops up here, enrolled changes here. So that's a couple of nice ways of record keeping. So we just did step 2, which was enroll the youth. Now let's say that you're ready to go ahead and start entering data, so WIFI data or TOM data or something like that. Now, before you would do that though, one of the things I want to point out is that the information on this demographics tab and the WrapTrack tab, which I'm going to click in a second, is actually going to be more coming from your WIFI demo form. And that's a form that you may have folks collect when they're interviewing a facilitator, for example, or interviewing a caregiver. What interviews do you guys do for the WIFI? Do you do all 4 or just certain ones?
I'm not sure, actually. I don't know that we've done anything with the...
Right. Okay. Well, as you kind of get into the process and you're starting to collect that data, in interviewing folks, you can kind of figure out what makes sense. But at any rate, you'll want to make sure that you're completing the demographic form, the WIFI demographic form, and that's all connected in the measures on our website. But you'll note that there's a little description on the demographic format at one point where it says, if you're interviewing facilitators, use this. If you're not interviewing facilitators, use it with the caregiver interview so that you at least collect that data somehow. So that's just going to be important to note to make sure you're doing that. And reason being, that information, again, will help you fill out this demographics section of the youth record and also this WrapTrack tab. So essentially, it's like if you're looking at the WIFI demographic form, this is the first page of that form. It's a 2-page document, and this tab is the second page of that form. And so this is just school information, which are the questions that are on the back page there. And it just says, it was used in schooling time in the last 30 days. Click yes if it's true. Select the grade that the youth is in now or will be in. and then hit save. So that's essentially it. That's what we call sort of step 3, is just kind of completing this information, demographics and WrapTrack. And since I'm in Chrome, I'm getting these messages at the top here, and that's sort of what helps remind me, oh, I did something right, or I need to pay attention to something because it's not correct and it's not going to let me save, which is, again, why we recommend Chrome, because it's just has a few other details that are really nice when using this. So now for the final step, which is the 4th step, I'm going to click on the assessment. So again, just to recap, sort of step 1 is create a new youth record. Step 2 is the enrollment. And step 3 is making sure that you have your demographics and your WrapTrack stuff entered. These tabs complete, and again, that's found on the demographics form, the hard copy form of the WIFI. So obviously, if you, let's say you are entering a youth where you don't have that data and you're just collecting TOM data on a youth, you're not going to worry about that step 3, that WrapTrack tab, because that's, again, specifically just for the WIFI 4 demo form, not anything connected to the TOM. So you'd skip that step if you're just entering TOM data. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on assessments, and because this is a new youth, we don't have anything in here, so if I were to click add, this is what it would look like. I'll just click on TOM and show you what it looks like. Again, this is, sort of mimics the hard copy form. This is the information that you're going to enter in up top. This is the list of individuals that are part of the team, and then this just follows the process. The first item, which is team membership and attendance, the second item, effective team process, etc., so forth. And again, if you click on here and then hit tab, you can kind of see that my screen is showing a highlighted box every time I hit tab. So if I wanted to, I could drop down and hit yes, or I could tab and hit 0, 1. I could type my notes, 0, tab, whatever you want to do in terms of data entry, whatever seems quickest for folks. I'm not going to save this, but what you would do is you go then through all of these tabs. You get to part 10, and you just make sure that then you fill out any additional notes, observer notes, and the length of the interview. So these are kind of important pieces. The start and end times of your TOMs and your WIFI 4s are very important to actually collect that data and enter it into these fields. I'm just going to close this. I'm not going to save it. I do not want to do that. And I'll just show you really quickly a caregiver form, for example, as well. So, this is, again, some of this information kind of carries over, which is great, but obviously you want to make sure that you're entering every piece of information into these fields. So who's the caregiver, and again, if this is something that you only want to identify the youth and the caregiver by an ID or with a WRAP ID, that's fine. You can do that and just add that in there. Just something has to be in the field, obviously. Facilitator name, interview date, time frame is something that some people choose to do a couple of different ways. Let's say that you typically always interview folks at a certain point in time. Let's say it's 6 months from the start of their wraparound services. That might be what you list here. 6 months, gets entered for the time frame. Let's say that you're also interviewing at more than one time point. Not everybody does that, but some people are interested in interviewing at a couple of different points. And if you are a community that does that, you may want to, again, if it's 6 months and then 12 months, you'd put 6 months or 12 months. Or you could also put time point 1, time point 2, whatever makes sense for you guys, but you want to make sure to include that information. The type of administration method, and then you just go through and kind of click on these, and again, mimics the form, so that shouldn't be challenging to sort of follow the process. And just again, click through these, and you get to your final tab, which is Other for the WIFIs, and you'd insert any feedback or interviewer observations, and then you'd put your end time and hit save. And so that's data entry. Pretty simple. I don't think it's too complex, and obviously if we'd saved any of those, they would show up here, and then you can make edits to them if needed. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just show you really quickly sort of the exports and reports for just a very quick second. So I'm going to click on Report 1, Summary of Respondents, and let's say I want to look at use by organization. So I'm interested in looking at, based on the different subsites. I'm going to hit continue. And then here's where you can actually choose then and say, okay, well, I want to look at this subsite connected to that subsite, or just one. Actually, I think I'm going to just click one. So you could just look at that particular one. I'm just going to do that for right now. And then once you do that, you can look at particular youth as well. And this only shows up when you select certain options, and you'll play around with this and get the feel for it, and then obviously feel free to ask any questions about that. This reporting and exporting is going to be a bit down the road for you guys, so we can always come back to this when this becomes something that you're a little bit more interested in doing at the moment. I know you guys are still working on the data and getting the data piece, so this might not be as important at the moment. Let's say you want to look at more than one use. I'm just going to hit continue. And then it gives you the list of all the use that are connected to this subsite. And then I can just go through and say, okay, I want this one, that use, this use, not that one, this one, whatever it is. Or you can even select all and then unselect, certain ones that you don't want to look at. I'm going to hit continue. And then it gives me sort of an option where I can look at all of the data for these particular use, or I can select a date range, which might be most appropriate for folks when they're reporting. And you can actually just choose, and I'd say here, I'd say something like this. And I'd do today's date. And then if you'd like to keep these qualifiers that we just entered into for all of the reports, you'd hit the Keep Qualification button here and hit Continue. And then it pulls up your report. And we really recommend folks clicking this export button up top and then looking at it in a different way. And again, if you wanted to look at this in Excel or Word and there's like a table or a graph or something that was interesting visually that you'd want to put into a report that you guys generate as well, you'd maybe want to push it into one of these versions, and then you can actually yank that out, save it, and put it into your own report. I'm just going to click on PDF and show you what that looks like. And it'll just take a second. My computer is slow this morning. Okay, and you might get a little message down at the bottom, letting you know what's going on, and it actually opened on my other screen. Apologies. So this is then, what it looks like, and just sort of lets you know, okay, this is what you've just generated. Here's when it was completed. This is the information that you just wanted it to pull. So, some nice information there. All right, and what we'll do lastly is look at the data export. Same kind of thing. I'll just click Tom this time. And it's, the way that you look at specific use as well is by one organization or by one user. So if I were to click on then, like all organizations, for example, we'll show you what it looks like. So I'll hit continue. Then it automatically selects those. And then again, here's where you can decide, okay, I'm thinking it's raw data export, so I might just want to look at the numeric values. I want to look at it in an Excel spreadsheet. And then I want to look at, either can look at all dates or I can hit specific dates. I'm going to hit specific dates, and then again, I can do the same process where I choose this particular date range if I want to do that. I can again keep this qualification and then look at these qualifiers for all of these particular data exports. I can also remove identifying information if that's something I'm interested in doing. I'm just going to go ahead and just hit export for the purpose of our demonstration here. And again, it opens up on my other screen. Sorry about that. And then you can just see again, this is the information it tells you we just pulled, and here's that data kind of connected to it. And the data dictionary really helps with these variable names, just to kind of know what they are and what they mean, so I would use that data dictionary for that purpose, obviously. And there it is. So that, in a nutshell, is really what you're going to be doing when you're in this type of system, obviously. Now, would it be helpful to just very quickly show you the place where you'd be doing some of those administrative pieces, Elizabeth?
Probably, I think. It looks like it's probably pretty easy to do everything. It looks pretty self-explanatory.
Exactly. Exactly, yeah, and all of the pieces of information that we've put on the website are really helpful as well if you have any questions, but you can always contact us. Anybody can if they have questions. So yeah, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And so I've just logged in, and I'm just showing you another configuration that we have here where the data is de-identified. And this particular person is a administrative role, so they'll have that admin piece. So I'm going to click on Menu, and then I'll go to Admin and click on Administrative Tool. And so what it does is immediately it just pulls you right up to, do you want to add or edit any users? So that screen is what it generates right away. So this is exactly where you, as sort of administrator, would come in and add additional users. So this is where you might want to talk to them about their username and password, and if they have a preference to what that would be. The first time when you're creating it, and then following that, it's up to them to kind of manage their own password. So if they forget their password, they really got to use that forgot password link. It's not going to be up to you to be able to tell them, because you won't know, they could change the password at any time. So it's really going to be up to the individual user to manage their own piece of information there. So you just enter this information. You want to make sure that you have their most up-to-date email address, obviously, that type of thing. And then you want to make sure that you're selecting them and putting them in the appropriate role. And so if it is just, someone that's maybe going to only come in and just do that data entry component, why don't we just go ahead and make them a team member? And so you'd select team member here. You can select supervisor if that is sort of set up for you, but that is not an important component, so I wouldn't worry about it. So other than the username, password, email address, and role, the other very important thing on this page is you want to make sure that you click on Add Organization to User, so that, for example, let's say that it's someone that only deals with youth that are in a particular subsite. I'm going to make sure that I click on primary organization and this column as well for them. And I'm just pretending that this person only does Mason County only. And then I would hit OK. So that would be how you'd add them to a particular subsite. And then save all that information. Obviously, I'm not going to save this. I'm not going to create another user for this group. But and then what you would do is you'd come down here and you'd click on Manage Users, and that's how you'd be able to sort of know who you've got in here. And you can always edit them, edit yourself even. That's not a problem. One other thing is to look at your organizations, and this piece will be set up for you initially, but you could just click on Manage All, and that would show you your organizations, subsites listed in here. So you're really not going to use organization probably too much, that tab, so I wouldn't worry about that very much. You won't use role, so don't worry about that. You'll definitely use permissions, users, and maybe youth records, and I'll tell you about why in a second. But let's just pretend that we want to discuss some of the permissions, for example. So that person that we were just entering, we were adding in as a user, and we made them a team member role. Anyone who then is listed as a team member role will have the same permissions. And you do that by coming to this role drop-down and selecting team member, and then going through all of these tabs and giving them the appropriate permissions. So for example, as a team member with the Wi-Fi tool, for example, you'd have a Tom tool here, not Wi-Fi EZ, but this is this configuration setup. You'd go in and you'd say, okay, great. For the Wi-Fi tool here, I want to make sure that, yes, they have access to all 4 of the respondents so that they can add the Wi-Fi tool for youth. But I may not want them to do any data export, so I'm going to unselect that, right? And then same with reports. I don't want them to be able to report anything or pull reports. So that would be something that you need to go back through, and I'm just going to go back and reselect these because I don't want to mess that up. But that's what you're going to want to do when you then start adding users. So it's really a simple process. It shouldn't be too complex. Oh, and then lastly, I'll just show you the youth records. Let's just say that someone accidentally enters somebody that they don't want to have in the system, and and you've deleted all the other information, but their youth record is still showing up in that list on your dashboard screen. As an administrator, you can come in and click on use records and say, oh, okay, I see this is the use that had the error. I can identify them here, and then I can actually delete them permanently from the system. And obviously, if you want to re-enter them at another point or what have you, that's easy enough to do. But if you do need to delete anyone, you would have the permissions to be able to do that. But you would want to limit other folks' ability to do that. So in respect of time, and given that we've kind of hit the end of the process as well anyway, do you have any questions, Elizabeth? I mean, I know, some of this may be a bit premature in terms of the process of where you guys are, but just in terms of getting into WrapTrack and then sort of understanding how it relates obviously to your measures, any questions about any of this?
No, it looks like it's probably pretty self-explanatory. I think we'll be able to get it
Absolutely.
figured out once we get.
Great, great. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and just set you guys up anyway, like I said, and I'll send you that information. I might be able to get to that today or later in the week, but either way, I'll get that in the system so that you have it for when you're ready to start using it. And then once you guys get in there, if you have questions, certainly feel free to contact, like I mentioned before. But also, if you have any questions about the process of using the forms or any of that either, feel free to just let us know. It's not a problem. We're happy to help at any point.
All right, great.
Great. So I'm going to let you go if there are no other questions, and then I'm sure we'll talk in the near future.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye.